This is a WSA 9 special report. Breaking news from the Supreme Court. I'm Nathan Baca. The justices have just released their opinion in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization. That's the abortion rights case linking back to Roe versus Wade. The final decision. Our colleagues at CBS News will be back with a special report in just a few minutes, but we want to have much more for you here at the Supreme Court. Now, here is what is going on, especially on a local audience. Now, people are going to be wondering, how does this affect people in D.C., Maryland, Virginia, and West Virginia? I'm going to lay that out all for you, and we're also going to be working on live reports very soon. Now, in D.C., according to Planned Parenthood, this does not have any particular effect because the way that the D.C. laws are. Now, D.C. law states that people will still be able to have an abortion up to as many weeks as possible. Now, here's the caveat, though. People on Medicaid still are not able to have an abortion under D.C. law and have them pay for that. Now, in Maryland has just recently passed laws that will allow people to have not only Medicaid protections, but also have increased the availability of what is going on when it comes to health practitioners being able to pay to actually be able to move forward and do those procedures. In Virginia, though, we are set up for a legislative battle. And in Virginia, what's happening is that the legislature there may very well decide that 15 weeks is the cutoff, very similar to what Mississippi attempted to pass. That has not come up for a vote yet. There is no plan for that to come up for a vote at this time, but that is what some in the legislature want to do, to reduce it from approximately 24 weeks down to 15 weeks of gestational period to restrict abortions. In West Virginia, however, things could be very different after today. West Virginia is one of those states that have a so-called trigger law, in which case the West Virginia legislature, as soon as today, may be able to enact a law which will make all abortions illegal in West Virginia. And so what we are going to be doing now is going to Nicole D'Antonio, a reporter right now at the Supreme Court. Nicole, how are things?
Well, guys, I want to show you outside here at the Supreme Court. There's been a lot of emotion in the last hour or so. So just over my shoulder here, this is a group of pro-life supporters. The moment that decision came down, we saw the group here just erupt in applause. People were crying, people were hugging. On the other side over here, you can hear pro-life or pro-choice advocates on that side. At the same time, when you talk about all this emotion, we saw people that were just silent. They were just telling us they were stunned by everything that they were hearing in that moment. So, I want to show you at this moment, again, you can see more celebration taking place, but there has just been a lot of emotion out here over the last hour from people on both sides, both pro-choice and pro-life supporters. Some people telling me they had been camping out here for days. I had a gentleman tell me he actually traveled here from Oregon to take part and be here in this moment. So, on both sides here, people just having a lot of emotion with this. And there has been a lot of security as well. I want to show you over my shoulder here, there's been police. They've actually had to block pro-life and pro-choice supporters at one time. And in fact, I want to show you again, as all this is unfolding live, we see another huge crowd of people making their way over. This is what we've seen the last hour. Hundreds and hundreds of pro-life and pro-choice advocates making their way down to the Supreme Court to talk with other people, to take in this moment. Again, it's been nearly 7 weeks since that leaked Supreme Court draft opinion indicated overturning Roe v. Wade. But once that final decision came down, it was a lot like this moment right now. We heard cheers from the pro-life supporters here. I saw people popping champagne. There was people hugging, people crying. And at the exact same time, we saw pro-choice advocates who were just stunned, shocked, and silent. It was one of the quietest moments that I had seen from the pro-choice advocates over the last week that I have been out here. So, guys, I'm going to send things back inside to you. But again, just a lot of emotion from everyone who's gathering here outside of the Supreme Court.
And Nicole, I also see a anti-abortion protester of note here locally over your left shoulder. That would be Lauren Handy. She is the woman who, according to DC police, had at least 5 human fetuses in her DC basement that she says that she had recovered from the Washington Surgery Center clinic. Again, there are not only high-profile anti-abortion protesters, but indeed pro-choice and pro-life. So we are now going to go to Abby Larico, who is also at the United States Supreme Court. Abby, what is the situation now?
The vantage point here is very similar to what you heard Nicole just talking about. We have seen the crowd kind of divide itself. We pulled ourselves out of that just a little bit here, but you can really see actually more people have showed up since we first got here. And when we first arrived, the crowd was divided and pretty much equal in number for people who were anticipating what they thought was going to be a long-fought victory, which in their mind, the overturn of Roe v. Wade. And then the other side, which said, you know what, we saw that leaked Supreme Court decision. It's not something we're used to seeing, the Supreme Court, a decision, a draft opinion rather, being leaked and causing this kind of uncertainty in the pro-abortion rights movement, saying we need to get out there and apply some maybe last minute pressure. We need to go out and show these Supreme Court justices that we aren't going to stand for this. And they have kept out here despite the fact that it came down not what they were hoping for. Again, with this Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Center overturning the precedent set forth by Roe v. Wade, a victory for the anti-abortion rights movement for the past 50 years or so. And they celebrated it like a victory. We saw bottles of champagne actually popping up there behind me. And then at the same time that was happening, folks on the other side, we saw people collapsing in tears. We saw them hugging each other. So to reiterate that the word emotion, that's pretty much the best word for this right now. However, when you talk about a victory, that sounds like it's an end point, and that's not how a lot of the folks on the pro-abortion access side have been framing things. Talking to younger folks especially, they're saying this is not the end for us, whether that's calling into question the legitimacy of the Supreme Court and the decision that they've made, whether that's going out and calling some of their lawmakers. They tell me, though, that it's kind of galvanized, especially this Gen Z, especially young women, seeing a lot of them coming out here, even after that decision was made, some of them heading out here and saying, we just need to make sure we are out here supporting our sisters. And I even had one woman tell me that she wants to be on the right side of history. Again, that's that side. They say they're going to continue this fight. Meanwhile, the other side is celebrating. It's an interesting protest, though, I'll tell you, Nathan, because there's a lot of music, a lot of people chanting on both sides, and how long they'll want to be out here, how long this will last, not quite sure, but it's gathering in numbers, and not the least of which is the people who would be walking along the Supreme Court and Capitol Hill regardless on a beautiful Friday afternoon in Washington, D.C., just doing a little sightseeing, seeing history right here.
Also, what is once everybody comes in? Tribe? Okay. Yeah, well, that's what I'm thinking. I'm just shut up and let the ladies. Yeah, we can use wherever.
Some delays, because that's going to be overwhelming pressure on those healthcare workers here in this area to service women from all parts of the country that are being affected by this law today.
Just recently I interviewed Planned Parenthood, and they were talking about just how they're already seeing an influx of
Okay, was my hit okay? Did you get my?
From Florida, from Pennsylvania, because in a sense, D.C. and the metro area could be seen as a refuge, a sort of haven.
Right.
Already you have Prince George's County Executive Elsa Brooks declaring that she wants Prince George's County to be a legal haven for abortion services. You have a situation where now Virginia could, in the future, with the future legislative session, roll back abortion rights. West Virginia, people in our viewing area, living in Martinsburg, living beyond in the Panhandle, could very well be losing some of those rights as soon as today. Nicole D'Antonio is live right now at the United States Supreme Court. Nicole, what is the situation you see now?
All right, do we have Nicole? All right, we'll go back to her once she's ready. Okay.
We heard from people on both pro-choice and pro-life support. Hey guys, can you hear us? All right, well, I want to tell you a little bit about some of the stories that we have been hearing out in this area. So again, key word here, just a lot of emotion. We've been hearing stories from both pro-choice and pro-life advocates. One person telling me they traveled up from Oregon this week. We've had other people say they camped out here for days. We witnessed that. We saw both pro-choice and pro-life supporters out here camping out in front of the Supreme Court as they waited for that decision to come down. Once that decision came down, we just saw that group of pro-life supporters just erupt in applause. I do want to show you around here to show you just some of the security that we're seeing out in this area, because again, that leaked Supreme Court draft opinion that was just leaked 7 weeks ago, since that happened, we saw this fencing, the barriers go up. We've also seen all morning long just the extent of law enforcement out here. So all the way down this line, you can see all the police officers that are out here just making sure that everything remains peaceful. At this time, guys, we've only seen some minor incidents where they've had to step in and actually separate some groups who are getting pretty vocal with each other. But if you want to follow me, I want to just show you what we're seeing at this hour. So again, over the last hour or so, we've seen the number of people out here just continue to grow. A lot of emotion out here. We've seen people in tears. One pro-life supporter telling me that she was a part of the pro-life group in college and that she had been wanting this for decades, and that this is what she had been hoping and praying for. At the exact same time, I spoke with a pro-choice advocate who told me that they had been camping out here for 3 or 4 days, that this was a moment in history and that they were worried about what this would mean for the future and for their future kids. So it's just been a heavy feeling out here. That moment that it came out, guys, it was interesting. While at the same time we heard cheering from pro-life supporters, at the exact same time it was silent. People were just stunned. Pro-choice supporters were stunned by what they were hearing. So both sides just feeling a lot of emotion with all of this. I'm going to send things back inside to you. We're going to continue talking with supporters out here and continue to bring you updates throughout the show.
All right, Nicole, thank you so much. You know, it's interesting. We're hearing from President Barack Obama saying on Twitter the impact that this is going to have on women across the country. But to Nicole's point, and I think she articulated it well, is that there are strong supporters on the other side of this issue that look at this day as really their moment, right? This is their civil rights moment for them. 50 years in the making that they've been trying their best to make these sort of gains in an issue that they say for them is morally rooted.
Right. This is the beginning. In the 1980s, you had the moral majority, a group of evangelical Christians who really started to propel what we now know as the Reagan Revolution, and start to steer the Republican Party, which at the time was actually somewhat half and half for abortion rights, and really start to steer it and say, no, this party, the Republican Party, is definitely a party of wanting to restrict abortion rights in the name of being able to say that to protect the unborn. And so it is now a litmus test, in a sense, for Republican politics, and it has become so polarized. If you look at the 1970s, whenever Roe v. Wade was decided, support for abortion rights was actually split somewhat evenly. There were actually many so-called pro-life Democrats at the time seeing it as actually a civil rights issue and saying to protect the unborn during the 1970s was actually an inner city sort of civil rights issue. Yeah. So we now have Abby Larico still at the United States Supreme Court.
Yeah, Abby, you've been seeing a lot of different people there. I think people on both sides of this issue, some for it, some against it. Can you describe for us kind of the mood where you are? It seems somewhat jubilant, and for some to be a major disappointment.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and just to kind of go on the point that you both were talking about just a second ago here about the types of crowds we're seeing, you might walk up to somebody wearing bright colors and, a feather boa, and they are on the side celebrating because this is the battle that they've won. You might see men standing out here and saying they stand with women. So it's kind of all across the board here as far as who's standing on which side of the Supreme Court right here, which of course did come down on the side of the folks who have been pushing for abortion rights to be overturned in the U.S. Their pro-life fights that they've called it for the past 50 years or so. But you hear that, Larry, you mentioned that kind of jubilant sound. It's because the side that lost, frankly, you could say, the side that lost, because they are the side that's been protesting out here ever since that leaked Supreme Court decision, the draft opinion rather, came out and signaled that this was going to happen, that Roe v. Wade could be overturned. That these protesters haven't really been silent, and they are telling me that they don't plan on being silent. A lot of the chants have to do with getting out in the streets, calling your legislators, handing out stickers and literature about what people can do in their home states. Because again, as a reminder, and I think this is important to continue reminding folks, is that this does not mean abortion
resolved, but it's important that already we're starting to hear from some of our elected leaders. Nancy Pelosi talked a minute ago about what this means. She says, according to her and her estimation, that this now emboldens Republicans to potentially push for a nationwide ban on abortion. And she said that women's rights in November is on the ballot. So it'll be interesting to see how the decision released today emboldens Democrats, liberals, independents, and even some moderate Republicans in terms of what they will do at the ballot box. Will they support more Democrats? Because right now we know that the party's in trouble given what we're seeing regarding inflation and some other economic issues.
We're going to see a battleground in Virginia because right now, not so long ago, we interviewed State Senator Joe Morrissey, a Democrat who does support abortion restrictions. He wants to, in a sense, reduce the gestational age allowed for an abortion from approximately 24 weeks to 15 weeks, similar to what Mississippi was saying. And the reason why is because the belief of fetal pain. When does a fetus experience pain? Science says, in effect, there is no sort of threshold in that instance because of the way that the nerves are in a fetus. That 15 weeks is sort of an invented platform. Right. However, you have a potential legislative battle the next legislative session, unless Governor Northam wants to call a special session. Governor Youngkin wants to call a special session. Then you could have that battleground come sooner.
Well, he was on CBS this morning, I believe yesterday, and he talked about the fact that he would like to see that period move back to 20 weeks.
Right.
That for him, that would be a compromise. And Morrissey is talking 15 weeks.
Right.
So we are talking about greater restrictions that potentially we could see in the Commonwealth. But right now, it seems that Democrats do have the votes, at least in the state Senate, to ward that off.
Right, because the Democratic state Senate leader, Saslow, he's saying this is not going to get even to a committee vote. And they still have that ability to do that. And in effect, you also have Morrissey, who's kind of that swing vote. He won't use this so-called legislative nuclear option and say, I'm going to go switch to be an independent or Republican. Right. That's what he said in our recent interview. So in effect right now, you could still have this become a major election issue in the next legislative election in Virginia because it teeters on that hinge right there. Maryland, on the other hand, is one of those states that has decided to increase protections, has just recently said that nurse practitioners can actually issue abortion services at this point, and is one of the few states that does allow Medicaid to be used to fund abortions. Unlike DC, which even though DC is a area that has virtually no restrictions on the abortion length because the budget is controlled by Congress, you cannot have Medicaid used. So that, according to Planned Parenthood, disadvantages those usually lower income folks who need Medicaid.
Which is going to be an issue that's exacerbated, right? When we talk about where abortions will be available, Maryland, DC, Virginia are, several of those locations where that's going to be the case. But if you're a woman in Texas, if you're a woman in Arkansas that's looking for that sort of service, you have to fly and go to these other states to access those services, which if you're already struggling to get by, making ends meet, then it's going to be even that much more difficult for you to sort of access those services because it's costly. There's transportation costs now that you'll have to factor into all of this. I want to go back to that Supreme Court decision and something that really struck out to me in the majority court's papers there, saying that the Constitution does not confer a right toward an abortion. Roe and Casey are overruled, and the authority to regulate abortion is returned to the people and their elected representatives. And now that conversation is really starting, right, in terms of what people will do moving forward. Some states, like we've seen here locally, moving forward with trying to guarantee that right. other states implying greater restrictions, trying to limit access to an abortion.
Indeed, and I believe Nicole D'Antonio is live at the Supreme Court now with an interview. Nicole, what are people saying there?
Hey Nathan, so we've been hearing just a lot of stories from both pro-choice and pro-life supporters. A lot of emotion out here. I want to introduce you to two people who traveled to be out here today. Tell me a little bit about what was going through your mind when that decision first came down.
I was just very emotional. It was like, I didn't think I would be here for this moment. This is going to be like history. This is just the beginning of, the pro-life generation, being there for women, for the unborn, and for the mothers, for humanity itself. Because, like 50 years, 60 million or more have died due to Roe v. Wade. And now here we are making history. Here we are saying that we stand for life. This is a celebration of life, and this is just the beginning.
I want to ask you the same question. What was going through your mind? I know you guys have known each other for some time. You're from D.C., been in D.C. for an internship. What was going through your mind when you heard that reaction come down?
I think mostly it was just shock and joy. Weirdly, one of the things that was running through my head was when I was, I think, a junior in high school, my social studies teacher specifically said, he was like, I don't understand the March for Life because Roe will never be abolished. And here I am living through the abolishment of Roe.
Thank you so much for your time. Hey guys, I just want to bring the camera over my shoulder here. You can see a big crowd rushing to the front. We've seen this happen a couple times. As we're making their way up to the front, again, I just want to reiterate what we just heard. Those were, of course, two pro-life supporters. But one thing that they said, I've heard from a number of pro-choice supporters as well, that this is a moment that they are going to remember. This is a moment in history. All right, I want to try and get close here to see who we're seeing. Who just walked by? AOC. Oh, okay, so we're hearing the AOC just walked by. You can see they're just swarmed by the media cameras. So where we're standing right now, in the group right here, this is all pro-life supporters. Just on the other side, there's a large group of pro-choice advocates. We're going to make our way over there as well, talk to some pro-choice supporters as well, get their reaction to all of this. But as we just heard, we heard from people that came to this area to be here for this. People are saying this is a moment that, one of those moments in history that they won't forget. So guys, I'm going to send things back inside to you. We are going to go over and talk to some pro-choice supporters coming up.
Let us know. We will come back to you right away. We are getting a statement right now from Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell saying this, that the Supreme Court's landmark ruling in Dobbs is courageous and correct. This is a historic victory for the Constitution and for the most vulnerable in our society. So it looks like the statements are starting to come out. We expect to hear from the president sometime this afternoon regarding this decision as well.
Well, and Nicole brings up an interesting point, because we're going to start getting lawmakers who are right across the street start coming in and start rallying people. I remember one of the leaked Supreme Court decision came out. Right. Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts came out and was starting to talk to people about what this is going on. So that's going to be interesting as well, because obviously police are going to have to deal with the potential trampling type situation. I mean, you started to see that the crowd really compress in. That could be a public safety issue that police may have to deal with. We also have a story coming up right now about the passage of Roe v. Wade and the debate and challenges that it's had in federal courts.
Yeah, well, since its passage in 1973, Roe versus Wade has been debated and challenged in state and federal courts. So here's a look at some of the historical moments in the abortion battle.
March 1970. Two attorneys file a lawsuit in U.S. federal court on behalf of Norma McCorvey, a Texas resident who wanted to terminate her pregnancy. The filing, Jane Roe versus Wade, argued that Texas's abortion statutes were unconstitutional and violated McCorvey's privacy under 5 constitutional amendments. In January 1973, a 7-2 Supreme Court decision in favor of Jane Roe rules that the Constitution protects the right to an abortion. The all-male justices found abortion was a fundamental right for a woman's life and future, writing that Texas had violated the rights of Jane Roe with an abortion ban that prevented her from having one. January 1974, on the first anniversary of Roe, anti-abortion rights activists gather in Washington, D.C. for the first March for Life rally to lobby Congress to change the law. September 1976, the Hyde Amendment, a restrictive measure prohibiting government funds to be spent on abortions, except in the case of rape, incest, or a threat to the life of the woman, is passed. June 1986, Missouri's governor signs into law a number of restrictions on abortion. Several of them were subject to court battles. 1988 and 1989, lawmakers in Pennsylvania amend the state's Abortion Control Act of 1982, adding 5 provisions, including informed consent before an abortion, a 24-hour waiting period, consent of one parent for a minor to have the procedure, and a husband notification requirement for married women. It was challenged by abortion clinics and physicians as unconstitutional. July 1989. The Supreme Court's ruling in Webster versus Reproductive Health Services upholds the law that the state of Missouri enacted, barring public employees and public facilities from being used to assist or perform abortions unless it's necessary to save the life of the woman. June 1992, Planned Parenthood of Southeastern Pennsylvania versus Casey. The Supreme Court's 5-4 decision upholds the provisions requiring informed consent before an abortion, a 24-hour waiting period before a procedure, and consent of one parent for a minor to obtain an abortion. The court did invalidate that husband notification requirement. November 2003, President George W. Bush signs into law the Partial Birth Abortion Ban Act, prohibiting doctors from performing late-term abortions. The law is challenged and blocked by federal courts in California, Nebraska, and New York. In April 2007, the Supreme Court upholds the federal ban on late-term abortions, ruling 5-4 in the Gonzalez versus Carhart case, finding that it was not unconstitutionally vague and did not impose an undue burden on the right to an abortion. July 2013, Texas lawmakers enact House Bill 2 with provisions requiring doctors performing abortions to have hospital admitting privileges no more than 30 miles from the abortion facility. And the facility must meet the minimum standards of an ambulatory surgical center under state law. Abortion providers in Texas challenge the requirements, arguing that they violate the 14th Amendment under Casey. This challenge ultimately ends up before the Supreme Court. June 2014. Louisiana's governor signs Act 620, a law nearly similar to Texas's admitting privileges law. Again, the law is challenged by abortion clinics and providers. June 2016, the Texas admitting privileges and surgical center requirements law is struck down by the Supreme Court in a 5-3 ruling. June 2020, the Supreme Court rules 5-4 in the June Medical Services versus Russo case to invalidate Louisiana's admitting privileges law, citing the court's 2016 Texas decision. May 2021, the High Court agreed to hear Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization case, the Mississippi law that bars abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy. Later, Mississippi state officials would ask the Supreme Court to overturn Roe and Casey. September 2021, Texas enacts Senate Bill 8, or the Heartbeat Act, the first time a state successfully imposed a 6-week abortion ban since Roe v. Wade. The act also gave members of the public versus state officials the right to sue anyone who performs or helps facilitate an illegal abortion. The Department of Justice challenges SB 8, and in December, the Supreme Court ruled to keep Texas's ban on most abortions in place, limiting who can sue state officials. May 2, 2022, a 98-page draft opinion written by Justice Samuel Alito in the Mississippi abortion case is leaked. Justice Alito wrote in his draft that Roe was, quote, egregiously wrong from the start and must be overruled.
Roe versus Wade and Casey, a woman's right to an abortion, is now left up to each state unless Congress steps in and passes a national policy. Right now, let's go back to the U.S. Supreme Court, where we find our Abby Larico. She's been talking with people there that have gathered outside of the court after the ruling was handed down today. Abby, what are people telling you?
Hey, Larry, so I'm just met up with Kaylee here. And Kaylee, you tell me that you grew up not too far from here, and walking by the Supreme Court on a regular basis, something about it right now strikes you.
it breaks my heart. I mean, I grew up, like I said, 6 blocks from the Capitol, and I spent my childhood going here on field trips and feeling like this was the change for good, and this is why we can move forward and evolve. And all of a sudden, it just feels like, what happened? This is not the world I want my daughter to grow up in.
So why be here in this moment?
Because I feel like it's the only thing I can do. I feel like my words don't matter, my vote doesn't matter, and my body, my choice.
And so being around all these people, seeing both sides, seeing such a mix of emotions right here, has it given you any kind of idea of what happens next, or is it still that kind of numb feeling you were saying you were having?
I think numb is the perfect emotion. I mean, we've moved forward in so many ways. I mean, we have the medical technology to make this safe, and other countries are doing it correctly. And then you see all these people that clearly want the change. I mean, my mom and I were saying, we were here when they put up the fence, and we were saying, if you have to put up a fence, what are you doing?
So do you feel like over the past few weeks, because this is rare, you growing up near here, we don't see things like a draft decision being leaked like it was.
That was completely unprecedented. We didn't know what to make of it. And like I mean, probably we'll have cop cars sort of based where we live, and we live next to senators and speechwriters, and my family's not in politics, but this is our life. This is everything that I grew up with, and seeing this change, it's like you said, I'm numb. I don't understand how this could happen.
Well, Kaylee, you stay safe here today. Stay hydrated. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective with us. Again, this is Kaylee. She lives nearby, and that's what she has to say about all of this. Send it back to you guys in studio.
All right, Abby, thank you so much.
Kaylee brings up an interesting perspective because as a DC resident, many DC residents are going to be experiencing history for the next few weeks. We could very well be seeing another large march similar to the Women's March that happened just after the inauguration of President Trump. This is going to become very busy and very kinetic here in the district in the coming weeks.
And there's also safety concerns too, I think we have to point out. DHS in June issuing a bulletin saying that, because of misinformation, because of this, heightened emotion that we have in the country right now, that there are legitimate safety concerns because people on both sides of this issue have been proposing, issuing threats against elected officials, those in government. So there are some legitimate concerns regarding the safety of justices and others that are associated with this decision, making sure that they're safe, but also the public is safe as well as we start to see people congregate. Nicole D'Antonio is also at the U.S. Supreme Court. She's been talking with people there as well that have really been spirited on both sides of this issue. Nicole, I believe you have some people there that want to share their stories.
Yes, there's a lot of people in this crowd, and as you're hearing, the crowd is getting louder and louder. So we have a speaker just over my shoulder. You can hear they're shouting, "My body, my choice." The crowd here is really grown over the last 2 hours. We've been hearing a lot of stories about the men and women who wanted to be out here today, including Lucy. I know I saw you were wearing a Ruth Bader Ginsburg t-shirt. I just asked what was going through your mind when you heard this decision come down.
I was upset. I saw when RBG passed away last year, this was only a matter of time for it to happen. I'm just really disgusted that this ended up happening. I saw yesterday with the decision on guns, I just wasn't hopeful for today. I kept hoping for the best, but it's clear that these justices don't care about the majority of Americans and their voices.
It's clear being out here, you can feel the emotion out here, both sides, pro-life, pro-choice supporters, there's a lot of emotion out here. You were saying your family has been texting back and forth, calling back and forth. Again, could you just share what's been going through their mind?
They're upset too. I mean, just millions of voices of women have just been silenced, and anyone with a uterus is now in danger of not having bodily autonomy. It's disgusting. I'm really upset.
Something else that I've heard from both pro-life and pro-choice supporters is people saying this is one of those days in American history that they will never forget. And, I'm curious, when that decision first came down, what was going through your mind in that moment?
I was scared. I'm fortunate enough, I'm from California, and it's protected over there, but women in Texas and where there's a conservative majority, they're not safe, and no one should ever feel like that.
Lucy, thank you so much for your time. Guys, so we heard from pro-choice, pro-life supporters over the last 30 minutes. I want to briefly just show you the amount of security. So just over the barrier there, so we have fencing, we have barriers, we have an entire line of police. From what we've seen, everything has remained mainly peaceful. Just after 10 o'clock, we did see police had to separate several groups, but for the most part, it's just been a lot of people wanting to come out here to share their stories and to make sure that their voices were heard. Guys.
Nicole, thank you so much. Obviously, we want everyone to be safe out there, to let their voices be heard, to exercise their constitutional rights, but to be safe in the process. We are hearing from Governor Glenn Youngkin about 20 minutes ago, issuing a statement on his Twitter account saying this, that the Supreme Court of the United States has rightfully returned power to the people and their elected representatives in the states. I'm proud to be a pro-life governor and plan to take every action I can to protect life. Also saying in that statement that they plan to introduce legislation in January on this issue.
Right, just like we were saying, Virginia is going to be an electoral battleground when it comes to this. The legislature could very well act soon. It's going to be an issue, especially for the very closely divided Virginia State Senate. West Virginia, as early as today, could very well enact a trigger law that would make abortions illegal in the entire state. However, there's not too many clinics left in West Virginia. D.C. and Maryland could very well continue to be, in the words of Planned Parenthood, a sort of haven for people trying to seek abortion services.
And overwhelmed as a result, because so many people will be traveling here. No doubt a historic day for people on both sides of the issues, those that are for it, those that are against it. The Supreme Court handing down their ruling, invalidating Roe versus Wade, saying that it is unconstitutional and returning that decision to the states. Our coverage continues on our mobile app and our website, WUSA9.com. Your next newscast coming up today at 12 o'clock. We'll see you then.
This has been a special report from WUSA 9. For continuing coverage, go to WUSA9.com or download our mobile app.